We are at the home of Timothy Kerns.
Tim.
Okay, Tim Kerns. Okay, and today is, and that's 4550 Timberlock Drive, Tallahassee, Florida. And the zip code is what?
32309.
32309. Okay. Today's date is March the 6th, 2014. My name is Carlton Cartwright. I'm the Executive Director for the Children's Coalition Incorporated. And the other people in the room are Miss Jennifer Beckles, who's sitting behind me, who has been acting as a chaperone all week as we brought the kids up here to Tallahassee. To the right here, we have Nerlene, pronounce your last name? Mildort. Then we have Braun Nelson, right? And over here we have Jaleel McConan. Okay. And let me see. All right, Tim, where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, at the Brooklyn Naval Hospital.
Okay. And what year were you born?
1943. 1943.
All right, and let's see. You were born where? In Brooklyn. Okay, gotcha. And what were you doing before you went into service?
I was a law student at the University of Florida in my second year.
Okay, let me have it quick. Okie dokie, and let's see. When is your birthday again?
19 November 1943.
Gotcha. All right, and let's see. Oh, what branch of the service were you in?
I was in the United States Army.
Mm-hmm.
Proudly served.
Were you any wars?
Yes, I was. I was in the Vietnam War and I was in the Gulf War.
Okay. And what was your rank when you separated?
I was a colonel.
Okay. And here, go right from there. You're gonna get all of that. How long were you in the service?
31 years.
Got it. Nerlene?
Yes.
Pick up number 2, please.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Where were you living at the time?
I was living in Gainesville, Florida.
Why did you join?
Because I wanted to be in the Army and I didn't want to be in law school, and I realized that there was a war going on, and I come from a long line of patriots, I guess, and I just felt it was my duty to join the military and get involved in what was going on at the time.
Okay. Why did you pick the service branch you joined?
Gosh, they were the guys that had all the neat stuff like tanks and things like that, and I wanted to be in an armor branch with the tanks and the cavalry units.
Do you recall your first days in service?
Yes.
How were you?
It was interesting. It was different. I was a little bit older because I was in graduate school, and I was in basic training with a lot of guys that were 18 and 19 years old. So I was probably 23 or 24 years old at the time. So I think I was better equipped to deal with basic training and the harassment and the drill sergeants and all that. So,
what did it feel like to be? What did your first couple of days feel like?
different. I mean, I've never been in the military before, and it just was a different routine and a whole new experience for me. But
Where did you go in? Where did you go in?
I went in Fort Knox. I was inducted at Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Okay. And I'm not sure we asked this or not. Just say yes. If it's yes, what were you doing prior to going into service? Did you answer?
I was a law student at the University of Florida.
Okay.
Tell me about your boot camp or training experiences.
Well, basic training was, you learned a lot of the fundamentals of marksmanship, you learned first aid, you learned military courtesy, you learned how to distinguish different ranks within the Army. You learn military courtesy, which is very important in all branches of the service. I mean, who to salute and when to salute, and, you know, yes, sergeant, no, sergeant, yes, sir, no, sir, that kind of thing.
Do you still remember those trainings?
I remember all of those things.
Do you remember your instructors?
I remember my drill sergeant, my first drill sergeant, yes.
How did you get through it?
I hate to say this, but I kind of enjoyed it. I mean, it was a very interesting time in my life. It was at a time in the Army when drill sergeants and basic training was a pretty tough place. There was a lot of physical abuse sometimes if you didn't behave right, and but I didn't mind it. I mean, it's kind of what I expected, and I felt it was a good and a fair training regimen.
Which wars did you serve in?
The Vietnam War, and I served in Vietnam from 1968 to 1969, and then I was in the Gulf War in Saudi Arabia. And the unit was activated in the end of 1990, and we deployed in early 1991 to Saudi Arabia.
Where exactly did you go?
In which war?
Start with the first one.
Vietnam?
Yes.
I was assigned to a unit that operated in what they called 3-corps area in Vietnam. There were 4 different corps areas. And this was the area that went everywhere from south of Saigon, which is now Ho Chi Minh City, over to the Cambodian border in the west, and up into the Central Highlands in the north. So it was a large maneuver area. Okay.
Yes. Do you remember arriving and what was it like?
I arrived in Vietnam by way of a civilian contract airliner filled with other men who were going to Vietnam, and it was hot when we got there. So
What was your assignment?
I was assigned to an armored cavalry regiment, and it was the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, which is called the Black Horse Regiment in the United States Army. And it was commanded at the time by, have you ever heard of George Patton, General Patton?
Yes.
From World War II? It was commanded by his son, who was a colonel at the time, George S. Patton III. So he was my regimental commander and quite an interesting leader.
Did you see any combat?
I did, yes.
Were there many casualties in the unit?
Yes.
How many casualties did you think you saw
Well, I can
during
tell
that
you,
time period?
a lot of casualties.
Mhm.
22% of my platoon in a period of about 5 months was killed, and several of the men were wounded. So, pretty high casualty rate.
Okay. At that time, what kind of job did you have?
I was a platoon leader
Okay.
in a tank company. I was a platoon leader of the 1st Platoon of Delta Company, 1st Squadron, 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment.
How large was your platoon?
21 people.
So it was what, roughly? You said 21%.
Yeah, I lost 6 guys,
Gotcha.
which is somewhere around that, or if not more. So.
Go ahead.
Tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences.
What kind of experiences?
Yeah.
Memorable?
Yeah. Memorable experiences.
Well, most of those are all good memories because we had a good time when we weren't in the field. We would go to the club, and one time we burned down a bridge just to see if it would burn down. And one time we ran over a truck that we weren't supposed to, and things like that. So those are, the good times really is what I kind of remember now. And the bad times kind of have faded into the past and only come back periodically, so,
Were you a prisoner of war?
no.
Tell me about your experiences in captivity and when free.
Well, I wasn't a prisoner, so sometimes I felt like I was a prisoner, but I really wasn't.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Yes.
Like what?
Well, I have a Silver Star. I have 2 Bronze Stars with V for Valor and 1 Bronze Star for Achievement. I have a Purple Heart. I have a Legion of Merit. And I have a bunch of other things on below that. So, I mean, I've been in the Army for 31 years, so you do collect a lot of medals just for being there.
Would you mind sharing with us circumstances surrounding what you did to earn a couple of those most prominent medals?
Well, the Silver Star I received, we were in contact, it was the 13th of April, 1969. We had moved to contact. There had been what's called an arc light or a B-52 strike on an NBA base camp. And we were sent to rescue the Aero Rifle Platoon that were pinned down, and a platoon, I think it was of the first Cav, or I forget, maybe it was the Big Red One. But anyway, they were pinned down, and I was leading, my tanks were leading elements of A Troop into this, and what turned out to be a battle when we got there. And several guys had been killed already, and there were several guys wounded that were pinned down. And there was a bunker that was occupied by NBA soldiers, and I led my guys and with my tank leading, against the bunker and defeated them and killed most of the NBA soldiers. So I ended up getting a Silver Star for that, and then a couple of Bronze Stars for other things.
Wow.
So, sir, may I ask you, how did you stay in touch with your family?
Then just through letters, we would write letters, and we would write them and we would get letters. I was in Vietnam for 6 weeks before I got the first letter, and that happened to everybody because there were no telephones, there were no, all the other things that soldiers have today. I mean, everybody's got a telephone and all of that. I would do, you know what a cassette recorder is? It's a little cassette, and I would periodically record messages to my mother and my father, and then you would just mail those like you would a letter back.
You were the only child, sir? You were the only child?
I am an only child, yes, which was not much fun for my mother.
How did you stay in touch with your family? And you was talking about cassette players
Okay.
and recording.
Pick it up from, what is the next question?
Yeah.
The only child, yeah. So, what was the food like at
In Vietnam or in the service overall?
Oh, in general, so what was the food
Okay,
like?
well, the food was good. I mean, I had no complaints. You had lots of food, and they used to tell you to take all you want, but eat all you take, and that was really the only rule. When we were in the field in Vietnam, we ate mostly sea rations, which is food out of cans. And but I have no complaints about Army cooking. Some of my best friends are Army cooks and supply sergeants.
I believe you talked about Vietnam. Has anybody asked him anything about Desert Storm?
No.
Okay. And what was that? engagement like for you? What year did you go to the Middle East?
We deployed to Desert Storm in early 1991. I was sometime in February. The air war had already started and the ground war had not started. I was the commander of a military police prisoner of war camp. I had about 2,000 soldiers in my command at
Wow.
that time.
What was your rank at that time?
I was a full colonel.
Okay.
And I worked for the 800th Military Police Brigade, and the commander was a good man, and we were pretty good friends. And as a result of that, I ended up getting a lot of other military police missions like law and order, security of ammo, supply points. The war was not very long, and when it ended, my troops were in charge of all the U.S. Customs operations and all the U.S. Department of Agriculture operations. So all of the equipment in Saudi Arabia had to be thoroughly cleaned before it was put back on the ships and sent back to the United States, and that included pressure washing and pulling the engines out of tanks and just really doing a very good cleaning job, because I'm not a biologist, but apparently there are some bugs of sorts and things and diseases that you can get through the sand and the plants and so forth. So that's why they had to clean all the vehicles so very well, and we had to oversee all of that. We didn't do the cleaning, but each unit did that. And then the customs work was in all of the airports that the troops were shipping out of, flying out of. We had to make sure that they didn't bring anything back to the United States that was forbidden, called contraband. And that includes weapons and ammunition and certain articles that possessions of enemy soldiers that somebody might be trying to bring back.
Were there plenty of supplies, sir?
Were there what?
Plenty of supplies?
Did you have all the supplies that you needed?
Yes, we did. If I can digress for a minute, we went over, our equipment was shipped over by boat, and we flew over as soldiers with a duffel bag and just about all you could carry. And we got there and the ground war started, and of course the ship hadn't gotten there because it takes several weeks for the ship to get over to the Gulf. So we really had nothing, and everybody kept saying, in years before, that the next war is going to be as a come as you are war, which means just bring whatever you have. Everybody else had all of their supplies and everything, but we didn't have any sleeping equipment. We had no desks. We had nothing. As a military police unit, you need that kind of thing. So we had to scrounge a whole lot of things to get along for most of the time.
Oh, so did you feel stressed or pressured in any way at any time?
Probably, yeah. Yes, I probably did.
Were there a lot of casualties?
No, I had no casualties. There was one young woman that was killed in a vehicle accident.
Oh.
There was no enemy fire. We were not involved in combat directly. We were, as they say, behind the lines. And my sister units were also prisoner of war camps, and there were thousands and thousands of Iraqis who surrendered without even fighting. I mean, they were happy to be delivered to the prisoner of war camps because they would get decent food and they would get clothes and they would stop being killed by our forces, because our forces were much better at war fighting than the Iraqis were. So I have even seen U.S. Army vehicles being driven by Iraqi prisoners loaded down with their own soldiers that would, help bring themselves to the prisoner of war camps. I mean, I'd never been involved in actual active duty prisoner of war operations, and it was interesting to see the Iraqi soldiers who had really taken a beating just trying to get within our lines so they could eat, and, you know.
I was going to ask, what was the reason? But you say they, I guess after engagement they had been so badly beaten. What was the reason for them turning themselves in?
Even before the war started, they called them line crossers. A lot of Iraqi troops on the front lines of Saddam Hussein's army would defect. I mean, they would come across, they would surrender. They'd basically come, you know, no weapons, waving white flags or whatever, even before the war started.
That was Hussein's?
Yes, Saddam Hussein was the king of Iraq at the time, or the dictator, I guess, more a dictator than anything. But he was really sacrificing a lot of his soldiers in that war, and they were very poorly fed, they were very poorly equipped. It got to the point where, in talking to these soldiers, some of them had been literally kidnapped off the streets of Baghdad, and when they came to our prisoner of war camp, they had very few articles of military clothing. I mean, they were wearing, I remember one guy had a Pizza Hut t-shirt on, and I mean, it was different. I mean, and I really felt sorry for them, you know, because they were really taking a beating and had no supplies and, you know, uniforms or anything.
So like, was he like? Did you ever see him? Like,
No, I never.
Contact, or was he like clever?
Who, Saddam? No, he was in Baghdad, I mean, or somewhere in hiding at that point. So this was back in 1991, so he stayed there for quite a while after we concluded the Gulf War.
So did you do anything special, like for good luck when you needed it or something?
No, I just behaved myself and, you know, tried to get sleep and eat well and do what my general told me to do and stay out of trouble.
How did the troops entertain themselves?
There were like volleyball nets. They played volleyball. We had some softball equipment. There really wasn't much to do if they weren't working. I mean, if they weren't working on a shift, it wasn't. You could go in Saudi Arabia. You could go into the city of Dhahran, and you could travel a little bit around in the area where we were located. But there was really no organized much of anything. I mean, we had some concerts and things like that, but that was it.
The same scenario as far as communicating with your family?
No, actually, bear in mind, this was 22 years after Vietnam, so once a month, or once a week, I could call my wife, which I never made a phone call from Vietnam because there weren't any telephones. When I went on R&R to Australia, I called my parents, and I think I had a girlfriend at the time I might have called. But in the Gulf War, there were telephone banks that you could go to periodically and call home. So, but I did also write a lot of letters.
Okay. Do you recall your last days in the service? First of all, what did you think of your peers, your fellow officers, and the men who were under your command?
Well, I mean, you're covering a big patch of time.
Right.
I would say, on the whole, my fellow officers during the Vietnam War were a good, well-trained group of leaders. At least in my unit, we had I don't know if you've heard about fraggings, or during the Vietnam War, soldiers would sometimes attempt to kill their officers or senior non-commissioned officers because they didn't like them. that never happened in my regiment.
I've heard a few stories like that.
We had, we had good leaders, we had good officers. I mean, there were some that weren't so good, but overall, I felt the quality of the officers and the leaders was very good.
So what was the punishment if you would do that in the field during a war?
Well, if you murder somebody,
If you threatened to murder your officer?
well, then you would go to prison at Fort Leavenworth down in Kansas, probably for the rest of your life. I'm not sure whether they executed anybody or not, but you'd pretty much spend life in prison for murder or attempted murder.
Questions? Okay. Where were you when you separated? How long were you in the Middle East?
I was in the Middle East from February until July. So I want to say the end of June or the first part of July. So 5 months maybe.
Okay.
Something like
What year was that? Do you remember?
that. 1991.
Okay. And when you separated, what did you do?
Well, I was a reservist. I mean, I was called up.
Okay.
I was the commander of the reserve unit, the headquarters here in Tallahassee.
Okay.
And I had, over there, I had a battalion of the Iowa National Guard,
Mm-hmm.
and then I had a battalion of the Michigan National Guard.
Okay.
And I was an Army Reserve unit.
Okay. So you had a break from active duty.
Oh yeah, I got off active duty in 1969
Mm-hmm.
and got in the reserves. I got off active duty in October of 1969.
God bless you.
Bless you. And then I got into it, came back to Florida State University, enrolled in graduate school, and what I really wanted to do,
Bless you.
bless you again, and got in the reserve unit because I was drawing the GI Bill and
Hold on.
separated 2 daughters. Just don't worry. It's good.
So where were we? I apologize, Colonel.
I got in the reserve unit when I came back. I was going to graduate school, and
Right.
I got in the reserve unit, and basically because I needed the money. I was single, and I was GI Bill, and I was working like 20 or 25 hours a week. And I thought this would be something I could. I was a first lieutenant when I got off active duty, so that was my rank when I went in the reserves. And before I knew it, it was 10 years, and I don't know what I was then, a captain or a major or something like that. And if you get 20 years in the reserves or on active duty, then you are eligible for a retirement after you retire. So I thought, well, I've done 10 years, I'll do at least another 10 years, but actually I ended up doing 21 more years. So anyway, I stayed in the reserves, and I was called up in 1990 to go to the Gulf War, and came back in 91. And I had an assignment after that, and then I retired in 1998. So
Where was that assignment?
I was a liaison. I worked for the active Army at Fort Gillem, Georgia. I was a liaison officer, and I forget whether it was the 1st or the 2nd Army at the time because they changed. But I was a liaison officer to the Florida National Guard and the Florida Division of Emergency Management. So my job was to work with those agencies in the event there was a large, significant disaster. And in our case, as you know, here in Florida, hurricanes are kind of our show here. So I think I was in that job for some months. I don't think it was a whole year. And I don't know if you have ever heard or remember Hurricane Andrew. That was the first national disaster or state disaster that I was involved in. So I helped, as I was a colonel at the time, and I helped coordinate emergency management efforts, and then the active Army came in and actually took over in Andrew. But that's what I did.
In '69, when you separated, where were you?
I was living in Satellite Beach, Florida. That was my home of record. That's where my parents lived, was Satellite Beach.
Okay, so when you came home, what did you do? Did you use a GI Bill when you came home?
Well, I came home in October and I entered graduate school in January of 1970. So I went to Mexico and we won't talk about that.
Okay.
So,
It was a secret? It was a secret? Mexico?
Mexico, yeah.
Oh,
It's all about a girlfriend and all that stuff.
so were you satisfied with your rank at the time?
My rank
Yeah.
at the time I got out, I was just happy to get out off active duty at the time alive. So I was first lieutenant. And interesting little side story, I was home at my parents' house and I got a letter from the draft board in Brevard County telling me that I should report for draft physical induction. And it just took one phone call to the draft board and I explained as politely as I could that I just got back from Vietnam and I really didn't need to be drafted.
So when you got out of the service, what did you do besides you joined the reserve immediately,
Yeah,
right?
no, I went to graduate school and eventually I got married and had a family and here in Tallahassee and I stayed here almost the whole time ever since.
Besides the reserve duty, what did you do for a living?
I worked for the state of Florida and I retired in 1998 from the state of Florida and I was the director of the state capitol police.
Oh.
Those nice blue suited people that you see down in the capitol.
Right.
So,
Okay, so then in 90 you were called to duty,
90 I was
went back overseas.
right to the Gulf War.
Right, and 91 you were done. So what did you do when you came home?
I went back to work at the Capitol.
Okay, and you retired.
1998.
Gotcha.
In February of 1998.
Okay, I'm sure you made a lot of close friendships. Have you maintained any of them over the years from the military?
From the military?
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I'm very, very close to the survivors of my platoon and the guys in my company in Vietnam and the 11th Cav,
You-
particularly.
Belong to any military organizations, VFW?
I belong to the American Legion. I helped start the VVA chapter here, Vietnam Veterans of America, in 1979 or 1980. I'm not active in that anymore. I served for 16 years on the Florida Commission for Veterans Affairs as a commissioner and vice chairman and chairman. I'm very proud of the fact that I was the chairman of the organizational committee or whatever that did the Vietnam Memorial downtown.
Okay, oh, congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you. That was something that I really wanted to do, as did a lot of my fellow Vietnam veterans.
Just have a couple more questions for you, Colonel. Did you, or I know it did, so how did your military experience affect your thinking about war and the military in general?
25 words or less. I don't know. My tour in Vietnam, I can easily tell you, was the most significant event of my life, and I'm going to be 71 years old this year. I loved being in the military. I loved the Army. It was incredibly rewarding to me. I met some of the worst people I've ever run into, but then again, I've met some of the greatest people I've ever met in my life in the military. So those are the people that I like to remember. But I'm extremely proud of my military service, and that's about it.
Okay. As an aside, you attend any reunions?
Yes, I do. Actually, I end up going to my company reunion more than my regimental reunion. It's just I'm closer to those guys. I'll go to the regimental reunion about every 5 years or so, but we have a company reunion every other year, and I try to go to that because boys are dying off pretty fast now.
Right,
So.
right. Is there anything that you feel like we left out that you'd like to
Really,
share?
I thought you guys did a really good job of asking questions, and you were pretty much on target, and I appreciate you coming. So,
Ms. Beckles, do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Good. Anybody?
I gave her the clip notes before. So.
So, sir, based on since you were in the war and you experienced it firsthand, do you think that in law term that people should get the soldiers out of foreign countries and only fight if they really need to, or just for threats?
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I guess, I'm not a pacifist because I guess sometimes you do need to fight, but I think wars are the last resort. And I think before we go into any wars, we need to have the people of the United States behind us, and they need to understand what we're doing, and they need to understand the consequences. They need to understand about a lot of people dying, and if it's that valuable, and there are things that are that valuable in our freedoms, then we should do it. But I think war is the last resort, and I think you find that real soldiers feel that way. I mean, we don't like war.
So would you rather our American soldiers travel to another country for war, or soldiers from another country come to us?
We want to hold on.
Not
Stop
sure I
right
got
there.
that one.
We would like to thank you for the interview
Sure.
and thank you for your service.
Well, you're very welcome. It was my pleasure. And I'll show you the library.
I'd love to see it. Hold on one second.
Got reinforcements and charged and all that. And he's received the Medal of Honor for it. And he survived, so he signed this, and then this is the artist's signature. But that's a good picture of armored combat.
How were you injured to receive
Oh,
your
I
Purple Heart?
got the Purple Heart for a small scratch on my arm, but I have a little. I probably could have more, so finally my medic says, okay, I'm putting you in for a Purple Heart now, it's time, so.
Very nice.
Anyway.
Look at that.
Sir, do you mind if I?
Excuse me.
No, this is an old German, World War I German Army saber. So. So I like books.
Amazing.
I love to read. I like.
Beaver the Beaver.
Is that the man?
That's the one.
Mr. Curiosity?
There you got it. That's the one.
That is,
We're at the museum.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
This is great.
the sword over there was Shirley's father's sword. This is Shirley's dad. He was a pilot in World War II in Korea.
He's up there.
Oh, this one comes out easy.
And, so, anyway.
Yeah, this is
That
the
was
war
his.
room.
That was his sword in military school in St. Paul.
Really, sir? This looks like a Chinese kind of design,
It might be.
and this one comes out easy.
There's a picture of him wearing it out in the hall out there. So, anyway,
Nice. Very nice.
This is great.
that's the Titanic. I'm a big Titanic fan too. So
Ms. Kerns, I'm invading your privacy here.
It's fine.
it's all right. I know where you live.
I know.
I can find you.
Exactly.